So we're joined today by Dr. Derek Kunimoto, who is co-founder and COO of Aviceda. Welcome.
Thank you, Sheryl. It's good to be here.
Yeah, thank you so much for taking time to speak with us. And it just seems appropriate to kind of check in with so much going on in Retina in general right now, and having had the ASRS this past weekend. Just kind of interested in hearing what's going on in the Retina space in general. So I'd love to hear more about your company and what's going on.
Sure. Well, thank you, Sheryl. So Aviceda, we are a biotech company based in Cambridge, and we're particularly excited to kick off this introduction at ASRS. As a retina specialist, myself and my co-founders, also retina specialist Mohammed Ghanid and Michael Tolentino, we are very happy that our first molecule is going to be in the retina space. We are developing our lead asset to target dry macular degeneration. Our biotech company based in Boston, that's where our labs are. We've been working with multiple CROs to do our preclinical trials. And right now we're at the stage of collecting in vivo and in vitro data. And all of that has been very promising thus far. Our biology targets the innate immune system. So what we're trying to do is alter or modify the body's immune response to certain diseases. Now, in macular degeneration, while we have treated wet macular degeneration and the end results of corneal neovascularization very effectively, one thing that our field has not done, although many players have been trying to do, is target dry macular degeneration. Dry macular degeneration is driven by an aberrant immune response. Most of the products have been targeted against the complement system, which is part of the immune state in the retina. While we think that this is part of the story, we do not believe this is the whole story. In addition to the complement system, there are numerous cellular components of the immune system which are acting aberrantly. In particular, the macrophages have been identified in chronic inflammation. And when these macrophages get aberrantly activated or polarized, they start to recruit other macrophages, and there's a whole cascade which ultimately ends up in the end stage disease of geographic atrophy. We're trying to address this aberrant inflammatory response earlier on in the disease. So we're looking at patients with dry macular degeneration. The idea is to shift the macrophages from a state where they are creating fibrosis, or creating atrophy, switch them to a state where they are a restorative macrophage. There is a concept of M1, M2 polarization. And in this polarization, we are aiming to shift the disease state macrophages to a resting or restorative state. We do this through a biology axis called Siglecs. These Siglecs are receptors on macrophages, specific macrophages, and each Siglec has a specific ligand that can shut down that macrophage. And we have identified those ligands, and so can effectively shut down this immune response, and therefore we believe the disease itself. So we are excited about this technology. This lead asset in dry macular degeneration is our first asset. We have other assets which we are developing, which will also address chronic inflammatory disease processes. Things including the inflammatory processes of diabetic retinopathy, proliferative vitreoretinopathy, even allergic conjunctivitis. So we are focusing on the eye as ophthalmologists, and we're hoping to create something that is transformative.
Mm-hmm. Could you walk us through the status of the research?
Sure. So, we are an early stage preclinical biotech company, although I have to say we're not so early stage. We do have some preclinical data that is coming together in IND, which we expect to be submitting over the next 6 to 12 months. We feel we're about 12 to 15 months from the clinic, so not too far off. Our data right now, we're collecting some in vivo data in rodents. And so hopefully with those data packets, we will be able to progress to our IND submission.
Mm-hmm. Okay, that's great. And I wondered too, if we could just kind of look a little bit at some of the other products or lead candidates that are in the pipeline.
Mm-hmm. Sure. So Right now, we are focusing on our lead asset called AVD-104. This is the dry macular degeneration lead asset. What this asset is looking at, or what it acts on, is two components. Again, I mentioned that complement. We also believe, like other biotechs and pharmaceutical companies out there, that does play a significant role in macular degeneration, and our asset does have a role in activating the complement shutdown system, complement factor H, and that is one mechanism of its action. And the second is this repolarization of the macrophages, the second and what we believe is actually the more important component of controlling this disease process. So with those two mechanisms of actions, we are looking to really shut down and even possibly reverse some of the disease damage that gets done in the progression of dry macular degeneration.
Mm-hmm. Okay. And in general, what are you most excited about in this particular field?
Well, I mean, for us, this is the holy grail, dry macular degeneration. While we effectively treat wet macular degeneration and save countless people's vision, keep them functional, we still have a whole patient population, and the majority really of patients with macular degeneration that don't have treatment. And as a retina specialist, these are a very hard group of patients to meet with and counsel, because they're asking for some type of treatment, and right now we just don't have any effective treatment. So again, as a retina specialist, if this therapy were to work, it would be for us a huge fulfillment, a really big change, a sea change in the way that we treat this disease, and it would affect in a positive way so many millions of people.
Mm-hmm. The research that's going on right now, how might this be applied in the day-to-day for ophthalmologists, for them to think about?
Well, I mean, I think I think the first part is educating our ophthalmologists. This is really a new way of thinking about the biology. We've all been taught over the past decade about anti-VEGF, and while that's an important pathway for a particular expression of this disease, there are many other components that are involved. So part of this is just educating our physicians so that we can then educate our patients that it's a very complex and multifactorial disease. We don't claim to be the cure-all of this, but we do feel that we've identified a very important disease axis that also has to be treated in order for this disease to be controlled. So that's the first thing, with educating our ophthalmologists, who can then educate patients. But in the long term, the way that we see this evolving is, for a long time, we've separated the treatment of wet macular degeneration, or created a category of wet macular degeneration and dry macular degeneration, mainly because we have a treatment for wet macular degeneration. What we think our lead asset will do is actually transform the way that we're thinking about the disease, and it will no longer be just wet or dry, it'll just be macular degeneration. And this treatment really should work on both forms of the disease. Now, in an actively exudative choroidal neovascular membrane, there of course is going to always be a role for anti-VEGF, so we are not claiming to be a replacement for that, but we do think that our lead asset could potentially change the way that we consider or conceive of this disease, again making this really just macular degeneration as a single disease, and not separating things by our current treatment availability.
Okay. Well, we certainly look forward to hearing more in the coming weeks and months ahead.
Well, thank you, Sheryl. It's been a pleasure speaking with you.
Okay, Dr. Derek Kunimoto, thank you so much.
Thank you.